Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Patrick Condren's my name from the Seven Network. I'd like to add my voice of welcome to you this afternoon. Tuesday is, of course, the traditional day that a Premier goes up and calls a state election, and I've just been told that the bottom gates of Government House are open. So thank you for your time, Mr Nicholls. We're off. Always ready. Tim Nicholls is Queensland's Leader of the Opposition and Shadow Minister for Arts and Major Events. Mr Nicholls began his career as a senior associate at a major Australian law firm specialising in commercial law. He was first elected to Queensland's Parliament in 2006, representing the Brisbane electorate of Clayfield. Prior to his election to State Parliament, he spent 6 years in local government as a councillor for the Hamilton ward in the Brisbane City Council. Mr Nicholls served as Queensland's Treasurer and Minister for Trade from 2012 until February 2015. In his time as Treasurer, Mr Nicholls led the LNP government's fiscal reform agenda, including overseeing the Independent Commission of Audit. Mr Nicholls was elected Queensland Leader of the Opposition in May 2016, and presumably he hopes to be elected Premier whenever we do go to an election. The last few weeks have seen him travelling the state. He's been in a tinny, on a tram and on a roller coaster. It's all part of the blokeification of Tim Nicholls, or as my colleague Tegan George from 10 says, hashtag knockabout Nicholls. I had hoped that he would take a leaf out of Tony Abbott's book and turn up here today in his sluggos, but sadly he is in a suit, much to my disappointment. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Nicholls.
Well, Patrick, some things never change, mate, and you haven't disappointed tonight. So thank you very much for that very warm and kind invitation. Can I start off also by acknowledging some of my colleagues who are here in the room. Shadow Treasurer Scott Emerson, I think Scott's name was missed early on in the piece, Barton, and as a previous political journalist, I don't know how you could possibly have missed him, but Scott's here as well. To JP Langbrook, to Ros Bates, to Andrew Cripps, Christian Rowan, Ian Walker, David Janetsky and Pat Weir, all my parliamentary colleagues who are here, as well as representatives of the LNP, State President Gary Spence, Michael O'Dwyer, our State Director, and Vice President Dave Hutchinson. And there are also a variety of candidates in the room as well. So to all of them I say welcome and thank you for joining us today. Can I also join in thanking the sponsors for today's event and acknowledging their contribution. A vibrant and inquiring media is, of course, one of the tenets and cornerstones of our great democracy here in Queensland. And although sometimes as elected representatives we might wish that they were less vibrant and less inquiring, we do appreciate the job that they do, the role that they play, and particularly the Gallery and the Media Club for supporting the next generation of journalists who are going to come forward and put politicians to the test. Ladies and gentlemen, also to all of you who are here today, I say thank you and I'm glad you could make it along. Well, Queensland is a great state. It is a state of shining beauty, from the majesty of the Glasshouse Mountains through to the dry and dusty plains of Mount Isa, from the kaleidoscope of colours in the rainforest and on the reef, through to the ochres of the outback. A state of enormous potential. Potential in the natural resources granted by nature. Potential by virtue of our location and our climate, and the potential of our hard-working peoples. And Queensland has also long been a beacon of hope. Hope for a job, hope for a better life, and hope for a brighter future. But too often recently, that potential has not been realised, and sadly, that hope has not been fulfilled. And I believe it is not being fulfilled today. And that's why Queensland is crying out for leadership. And I am ready to lead, so let me prove it. Now, some of you might know my story. I'm the grandson of European and British migrants. And on Dad's side, My heritage is Eastern European. From a small village somewhere near the border, and it changed frequently, of Bulgaria, Greece and Turkey. And on Mum's side, it's British, from Yorkshire. And look, I know, it might disappoint you, it's also true, I am originally from Victoria. But that's part of the great story of Queensland. I moved here with my parents when I was just 12 years old. Part of that first great northern migration of people from the south. And my mum Barbara and my dad Peter, they bought a business in Brisbane, a car dealership, because they saw opportunity. The opportunity to take a risk, to educate their kids and to build a better life for our family, for my two sisters and myself. And they saw the freedom to do that here in Queensland. They saw a new frontier. They saw a state not hamstrung by rules and regulations and not held back by a big government with a do-nothing attitude. They saw a state with low taxes and a clear attitude of supporting individuals and recognising that it's the private sector that builds our economy and provides the jobs that make our future brighter and our state better. And they did that. Dad did take risks, and he worked hard. I didn't see him much at home on Saturdays. He put it all on the line, took out the mortgage, made the investment. And he was successful, and not without setbacks, but ultimately with the rewards that came from the risk and the hard work and the enterprise that he committed to when we uprooted the entire family and moved here to Queensland. And ladies and gentlemen, that was the environment I grew up in, and that has what's shaped me and my beliefs and my values. And I want Queensland to be that state of opportunity again, that vast land of enduring hope, our safest bet on our future. Because over the years, I've seen it slip away. Too many rules have crept in that hinder us from unleashing our full potential. I'm talking about the entrepreneurial spirit that encourages hard work and risk-taking, when effort is rewarded. Now, recent governments, especially Labor governments, and notably the one led by Anastasia Palaszczuk, have stifled enterprise while at the same time growing the bureaucracy and reach of government, and it's costing more and delivering less. Things seem to take forever to get done, whether it's building a highway or getting a licence. The studies, the reviews, the rules, the regulations, they get longer and more onerous, and nobody seems to be able to explain why. And in the meantime, other states, New South Wales, Victoria, are leapfrogging ahead of us. And after many years as the leader of the pack here in Queensland, why are we slipping further behind? We read about it almost every week. We read about it in almost every report on almost every economic indicator. Jobs creation, last in the nation. Domestic economic growth, second last. Construction work commenced, second last. Business exits, worst. Business bankruptcies, worst. Now, Anastasia Palaszczuk seems to be bobbing up a lot lately to shake a hand, to cut a ribbon, even to go and collect a baton. I believe it's what the Australian newspaper recently identified as her increasingly, and I quote, vice-regal approach. But that's a big part of the problem we've got here, isn't it? Anastasia Palaszczuk is up for the photo ops. She's there for the fluffy news, but she won't make the hard calls. How are her ceremonial hijinks any answer to the downturn in Townsville, where 1 in 5 young people is out of work, where crime is spiralling out of control, and it's bringing fear to the streets and to the families who live in that magnificent city? What will her latest fluffy stunt do to fix the hard reality of commuters left dealing with thousands of cancelled train services in Queensland's worst rail fail? And up to 2 years more of delays, according to the independent Strawn report. Why will she rush to cut a ribbon but freeze at the precipice of progress, ordering more than 150 reviews, task forces and inquiries, and that's more than 6 each and every month since coming to office? So 2 years into her premiership, Queenslanders would just like to see Anastasia Palaszczuk do something, anything. Queenslanders want a genuine leader who will listen, who will plan and will act, not just another figurehead. So here we go. I love Queensland, and I want to build a better Queensland for all of us. I want the return of that age of opportunity and prosperity I spoke about. And I want to see Queensland grow again and to prosper. My wife Mary and I have 3 kids. We've been tremendously lucky. Jeremy's 17 and just finished school and starting to enjoy the freedom that means. And his younger brother Duncan is 16 and he only has to wait 8 more months to see just what it will mean for him and follow his brother down that path. And my daughter Katie is 14, so there's 3 more years to go there. And my kids have given Mary and I all the joy, all the headaches, and all the irreplaceable experiences of love that blesses any parent. And I want them, and I want their kids, I want all of our kids, right across this magnificent state, to have the same opportunities in life that were open to me, and I suspect that were open to many of you. But to do that, we're going to bring back that frontier spirit that I spoke about. We're going to reopen the state for business to help create the wealth and the jobs for this generation and the next generation and those that come after. A state where if you back yourself, no matter what you do, it will be you who determines your success, not a government. Not a government that owes its existence to faceless union bosses, whose ministers will go to any lengths, even private email accounts, to hide the pull, the sway and the murky backroom grip of the unions. Not a government bound by such fiscal dyslexia that its only answer is to tie Queenslanders up in more red tape and regulation and punitive taxes. And I believe that my experienced team and I can turn this around. Our prospects as a state, once again, can be bright if we say no to the dumbheadedness and the self-interest of political survival and return real political power to where it belongs. The hearts, minds and the hard-working hands of all Queenslanders. Because Queenslanders are always up for the job. From Currumbin to Cape York, from Brisbane to Baduri, through flooding rains, through crippling droughts, time and time again, our collective heroics have carried the day. And we do love this land, this place we call home. And our love for that land is perhaps only surpassed by our care for each other when times are tough. And it's not too late. We have the skills, we have the capacity, and we have the great natural abundance that Queensland has been blessed with. and we know we've got each other's backs. But under Anastasia Palaszczuk's bogged down, do-nothing government, we just can't set free our arms. Now, under my leadership, a Liberal national government won't stand for stagnation. We'll get on with the job. We'll put Queenslanders first. We believe in supporting and incentivising everyday Queenslanders to be the best they can be, and then to get out of their way and let them get on and do it. We don't stand for vested interests. We don't stand for big business, and we most certainly do not stand for the union movement. We stand for hope, for hard work, for reward, and we stand for success. And I am confident of this, that together we will be able to build a better Queensland. However, in my confidence for the future are salient lessons from the past. And almost 5 years ago, we were afforded the privilege of government, and frankly, and while we did do a lot of good things for the people of Queensland, we let them down too. Having been out of office for almost 20 years, there was a built-in urgency to cast off the shackles of recent Labor governments and get in and get things done. And no one doubted that we had major problems to solve. But in moving quickly, we failed to explain, we failed to take Queenslanders with us on that journey. And I acknowledge that we broke the trust of Queenslanders, and for that, I am sorry. My team and I have learned a hard lesson, and we will not be repeating the mistakes of the past. And if I might be a little indulgent on a personal note, I am not the same person now that I was then. How could I be? I've learnt much from those days, as have my team, and I don't plan on wasting those lessons. That isn't my style. And that's another thing. My style is very different. I wasn't in charge last time, but this time I will be. And while we did lose the last election, as a team, we are today consequently infused with hard-won experience. Now, all around us there is work to do, and that's because Labor's inexperienced, softly, sooner or later, wait and see, review and do nothing approach is failing Queenslanders. The trains don't run on time. Our roads are congested. Hospital budgets are blowing out. Drug and violent crime is on the rise. Now, Anastasia Palaszczuk might think families should just put up with climbing living costs. She might think forcing businesses to pay more tax and higher electricity costs is a good idea. She might think that not building bridges, roads or dams is a keep the Greens on side ideological position that Queensland's growing population can continue to sustain. But I don't, and as I've been talking to Queenslanders throughout this magnificent state, I don't believe that many of them do either. And it's especially the case for those young Queenslanders who need the thousands of jobs that these projects will bring. If Labor's youth jobs crisis is allowed to continue, these young people will soon be a lost generation. In Townsville, 4,300 young people have lost their jobs since the election, and 4,000 of those have been full-time positions. In Cairns, the youth unemployment rate has risen to almost 24.4% in the last 12 months, and that's 1 in 4 young people out of a job in that region. In Wide Bay, where I was at the weekend in Bundaberg, it's marginally higher at 24.5%, and on the Sunshine Coast, which I visited a fortnight ago, 5,200 young people have lost their jobs in the last year alone. And even in Toowoomba, another 2,000 young people have given up looking for work over the past 12 months. In the Logan Bow Desert area, just south and west of Brisbane, 2,800 youth jobs have been shed in the last year alone, and that's on top of 2,000 youth jobs in the Ipswich area. And our famous outback, that icon of all things Queensland and Australia, is now infamously afflicted with a youth unemployment rate of 1 in 3. Now, these aren't falsehoods. Those are facts, straight from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And under Anastasia Palaszczuk, we've seen massive cuts to infrastructure spending, some $3 billion, just cut, without any explanation. Now, I believe our young people deserve the dignity of work and the opportunity and promise Queensland has given me and earlier generations. I believe that the Anastasia Palaszczuk Labor experiment has failed and is failing Queenslanders. So this is what we'll do. A Liberal national government will build a better Queensland, and to do that, I'm announcing our 5 key priority areas. We will create jobs across Queensland and responsibly manage the state's finances, and you know that we can do that. We will build stronger families because they are the basis of a strong, vibrant, productive society. And we'll build the roads, the bridges and dams we need, and yes, we will build dams so that we can increase the magnificent agricultural production of our state and provide water security wherever it may be needed. We will provide safe and livable communities across Queensland, and we will deliver better government, not simply bigger government. Now, we know that without a strong economy, government will not have the money to realise those 5 key priority ambitions. So while we focus on those 5 key priorities, our policy development will be centred on the economic drivers that will see those priorities through. And we will focus on these 6 key drivers of the Queensland economy. They will be tourism, resources, agriculture, construction and manufacturing, education, and services, science and technology. And we'll be releasing policies in respect to those 6 key drivers over the coming weeks and months. And what we can say now is that the greatest risk confronting Queenslanders today is job security. I've spoken about the youth joblessness, but in the last year alone, more than 32,000 Queenslanders have lost their jobs, and thousands more have stopped looking for jobs. In fact, under this Labor government, the participation rate for Queensland has dropped to its lowest level in a quarter of a century. And in Townsville, it's dropped to the lowest rate since records began. People are giving up and are losing hope. So we need to take action, and we've unveiled a 4-point plan to help get young Queenslanders working. And it includes a $5,000 apprenticeship incentive for small businesses, a $500 Tools for Tradies vouchers program to help an apprentice who completes their job get their tools of trade, and a $4,000 Job Start incentive, again for small businesses, to help them employ a 15 to 24-year-old who's out of work. And to keep them on, we will offer a discount on work cover premiums if they keep them on in the following year. And if you're going to build on that great start, if you are going to create more and more jobs, as we have committed to, you have to have a real economic plan behind it. And education, for example, must be a part of that plan. Education will be one of our economic drivers because it is such an enabler for our community and our economy. Education is an economic issue. For Queensland kids, an education less hung up on the school's systemic and workplace issues and concentrating on higher standards for both teachers and students is going to generate bigger and better opportunities. Better opportunities for jobs and to help people to actively participate in our society. So we'll empower teachers and local school communities to focus on their core subjects and to improve the standards of all. And the opportunities created will also help put a brake on crime. In other words, a better education helps build safe and livable communities as well. And just on that, once again, without a strong economy, government doesn't have the money to provide the resources needed to protect our community. And through managing the economy, we'll make sure that our hard-working police officers have what they need to get the job done. And we'll also help keep families safer by restoring to the police the powers that Anastasia Palaszczuk has stripped away from them. So they will have the necessary laws to move drugs like ice out of our communities and organised crime and bikie gangs back out of Queensland. Now, of course, traditionally, resources and agriculture have been our headline economic acts. They even feature in our coat of arms. And they will continue to play a leading role here in Queensland. From our huge coal reserves in central Queensland to the great beef-producing capital of Rocky and the cane growers in the north, who, I might say, on whose behalf we muscled up in the recent Wilmar QSL sugar marketing dispute. The richness of our regions is not going to desert us, nor will the LNP ever desert the regions. We have been there for over a half a century and we will continue to be there, doing what we've done, representing the people of regional and rural Queensland effectively, sensibly and to their great benefit in the Queensland Parliament. And whilst we focus on agriculture and resources, we also know that the economy is changing and a modern Queensland demands a modern economy, a diverse and vibrant economy. And we'll back construction and manufacturing because we know that's what drives jobs throughout Queensland. And because we believe in the future and the opportunity that it brings, we welcome the advances in science and technology that will see some jobs change and many more entirely new ones appear. And look, we're going to have to get better at reskilling and upskilling our workers to meet the demands of a changing economy. But I say to Queenslanders, we will help you do that. We're going to ensure that if you come alongside us and help us to build a better Queensland, you're still going to have a job. There will still be an important place for you at the economic table. And we're also going to make sure Queensland's energy security is not put at risk and that we don't end up like South Australia with blackouts and industry shutting up shop and moving away. Anastasia Palaszczuk's reckless 50% renewable energy target will mean higher power bills, and the Queensland Productivity Commission estimates are that the cost could reach up to $18 billion. Well, we won't stand for it. I won't stand for it. We're not against renewable energy, but we are against pushing up electricity prices for Queensland families and businesses, and consumers should not bear the costs through subsidies or higher prices. As recently as last week, the Premier hailed 3 new renewable projects, each with 20-year revenue guarantees. I simply say this: Premier, at what price? How much more will Queenslanders pay above the price of current power generation? As well, we pledge to safeguard the Great Barrier Reef for this generation, for future generations. We've already taken the Great Barrier Reef pledge and we'll forge an alliance of like-minded groups to protect this natural wonder. And those are just some of the things that a Nicholls LNP government will do. The LNP is committed to leading a government that is better for Queensland. Because more government isn't the answer to our problems. A better government is what we will build. We'll be a common sense government that listens, plans and acts to build a better Queensland. Now, you've been very patient, so let me close with these words. In closing, I want to reaffirm our position. Within the fast-changing political landscape that we all know is out there, the Liberal National Party will not be entering into a coalition with One Nation. I'll draw the line right here and now between us and them. One Nation might be good at spelling out the problems, but those problems require more than just a thought bubble. Thought bubbles, uncosted promises, won't create a single job. They won't protect our most vulnerable, and they will not build a better Queensland. Now, they talk and disintegrate. That's their record. Our team stands united, and we're doubling down, because we're a party that brings together two proud traditions, Liberal and National. And that means that voters get the best of both heritages. And my commitment is that we will work for Queenslanders to ensure a better future now and for our children. And I say to you that the Liberal National Party is the only party that can fix Labor's mess. When our side of politics vacates the field and doesn't argue its case, that's when we see the rise of One Nation and others. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to fight our corner against all comers. We are about preserving the best of our traditions and setting our agenda based on our values. As Sir Robert Menzies once said, the individual, the family and free enterprise. And under my leadership, our values are clear. We will put Queensland first. We believe in personal responsibility, not the nanny state. We believe in freedom of the individual. We believe in vibrant businesses, a society with loving families at its foundation, and a government that works for Queenslanders and not the other way round. And the gravest risk to our prosperity, to reigniting that frontier spirit, is in voting for a minor party, because that will return a Labor government. And how do we know this? Well, we've seen it happen before. It happened in 1998 and it happened in 2001. And the horrors of trains without seats, dams without pipes, pipes without dams, health payroll fiascos, the Bundaberg Base Hospital fiasco, spending at more than double the rate of revenue, and a debt heading to $85 billion, well, that's the result. And it's not a pretty sight. And already, One Nation has voted with the Labor government in the Queensland Parliament. So you can't get a more unsettling picture of the future than that. Now, I know Queenslanders are informed, and they've been telling us that they want a hard-working, experienced government with the ability to deliver real solutions to our challenges, and a government that will work for them. And I'll be working hard all the way up to election day to convince them that an LNP government is their best option for a better Queensland. That the only way to ensure we don't have another do-nothing Labor government is to put the LNP first. Now, you know, I don't see myself as anything other than a regular Queenslander with a very, sometimes almost two, public job. Every day, I get up, I go to work, I look after my family, I do my best to them to the best of my ability. And human dignity, that's what I believe in. And it comes from a great education, a good job and a secure environment. But for some in Queensland, perhaps for too many, this simple formula has moved beyond their grasp. And so the battle lines are drawn. The choice is clear between a team with the energy, the enthusiasm and the experience, a team committed to 5 clear priorities, a team with 6 clear economic areas of work, a team committed to build a better Queensland, and a team concentrating on jobs, jobs and jobs, and a Labor government which just does nothing. That is the choice the people of Queensland face at the next election. But together, with the people of Queensland, with their support, I believe that my team and I can build a better Queensland for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Banjo. If you could sit there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we get to the bit where the journalists get to ask the questions and Mr Nicholls gives some very, very brief answers. We are running slightly over time. Perhaps you could borrow. John Paul's got a good watch. Maybe you could borrow his next time. I'll kick things off. You said sorry again. Yep. You indicated that you weren't in charge last time. You were the Treasurer. Yep. And you sacked 14,000 public servants. Why should public servants trust you again?
Well, we've given an ironclad guarantee that there will be no forced redundancies under an LNP government.
So no forced redundancies? That's right. So you'd happily trim the public service again? Well, the public service gets bigger and gets smaller according to the individual member's desire. But no, we've, as I say, my team and I learnt some hard lessons. We understand the meaning of those lessons, and that's why, very clearly, I say to public servants, we want you to be the best you can, to deliver the best you can, to help us build a better Queensland, and there will be no forced redundancies under an LNP government. So do you think the public service is too big at the moment? Look, I think the public service have a job to do. In many cases, that job is being delivered well. I think our task as a government is to ensure that we deliver the best services in the best time frame we can. As a smaller public service, perhaps? I think the job is about making sure that the service delivery is absolutely the focus of our public servants. Okay. Someone at the media, Shane Doherty from Channel 9's got a question for you. Yep.
Hello. You mentioned the past government. Plenty of people were supportive of asset sales.
Yep.
Other governments have done it successfully. What has to be done to twist your arm to put it back on the agenda?
Well, Patrick, sorry, not Patrick. Well, Shane. Sorry to make that. Sorry to make.
I hope I look as good as him when I'm his age.
I got the good-looking ones mixed up. You guys work it out between the two of you. We took our policy to the people of Queensland at the last election, and we accept that verdict. They gave us a very clear writing instruction. So we have to, and we will, live within the means that we're granted by the people of Queensland.
Anyone else at the table?
So that's a big no to asset sales, right?
Sorry?
Big no to asset sales.
Oh, as I say, the people of Queensland have spoken. We accept that judgment.
No to asset sales. I want to hear the word asset sales come out of you.
I know you do. I know. It's an interesting task.
You can't even bring yourself to say it. No
well,
to asset sales.
Our program was that the asset leasing program, to be accurate, because they were leases, but. As I say, we accept the outcome and we accept the judgment of the people of Queensland, and I simply point out that the only people who have actually engaged in asset sales are our political opponents, who are still doing it today with $1 billion of land being put on to the auction block despite every promise to the contrary.
Chris O'Brien.
Mr Nicholls, governments often define themselves, or at least partly, by the very first thing they do. What is the very first thing an LNP government would do?
Well, I think the very first thing we'd do is say thank you to the people of Queensland for supporting our policies and our plans. And that's the very first thing that we need to do. And then the next thing we need to do is to ensure that they are aware that what we will be doing over the coming months and weeks. But obviously, there's a whole range of actions that we'll take, and we'll certainly be making announcements about our policies and the implementation of them as we go through the coming 12 months. Chris?
Mr Nicholls, Tegan George, you've been having a dig at Anastasia Palaszczuk for only being up for the fluffy stunts and the media opportunities.
Yep.
How does that differ from the knockabout Nicholls strategy we've seen over the last few weeks? For instance, we've seen you on a roller coaster, eating a watermelon.
Nothing fluffy about those, Tegan. They're all hard-working jobs. I haven't seen the Premier on a roller coaster.
Or in a tinny.
Or in a tinny, or on a motorbike. Tegan, I think though that you know, I front up on the hard days as well as on the good days. I don't shy away from the hard questions as well as the easy questions. You guys in the media know that I front, notwithstanding what might be occurring or what is likely to be. But my point is this. When you need to make hard decisions, and there are some difficult decisions about whether projects go or stop, when you need to have a clear policy about whether something ought to or ought not to happen, you need to front up and say, this is our policy, this is our position. Not one thing in one part of the state and another thing in another part of the state.
Anthony Templeton from the Courier Mail. Two questions. You've made a lot of the new deal for regional Queensland. How much money would a future LNP government be prepared to throw at that? And secondly, with the redistribution, in terms of a seat like Broadwater, would you prefer to have a sitting backbencher as the LNP's endorsed candidate or a former frontbencher such as David Crisafulli?
Well, in terms of our new deal for regional Queensland, we know that regional Queensland is hurting, and that $3 billion worth of infrastructure that has been cut has made an enormous difference in places such as where I was on the weekend, Bundy, where I've been and will be going again up to Townsville and Cairns and Mackay. So we've already committed to put $500 million back into our royalties for the regions program, a program that Labor slashed, that in the first year failed to deliver any projects under their government with a much narrower and smaller program. So we're going to put money back into those regions with that royalties for the regions program, as well as other infrastructure needs, and we'll be detailing that in the coming months. In terms of Broadwater and the second question, that'll obviously be a matter for the pre-selectors in that seat. I simply say that Verity Barton has been doing a great job representing the people of Broadwater as their elected representative.
Mr Nicholls, Sarah Elks from the Australian newspaper.
Yes, Sarah.
Picking up on your non-answer to Shane's question about asset sales, you did criticise the Premier for not making the hard calls. You emphasised the need for Queensland to have a real economic plan.
Yep.
And you've repeatedly left the door open since you became opposition leader to privatisation in some form to be part of your policy platform under a government you lead. Don't Queenslanders, don't voters deserve to know now what your policy on privatisation is? And I'm not talking about strong choices, I'm talking about privatisation in some form. What is your policy on privatisation, and don't voters deserve to know now?
Well, I keep, as I say to you often, Sarah, we took a policy to the last election and the voters rendered their judgment on it. In terms of our economic policy, I've outlined the key areas that we'll be focusing on in the coming weeks and months. I know it's a bit difficult for you there.
I can hear you.
Around those 6 key drivers of the Queensland economy, which together account for about 65% of our economy and about 75% of employment. We will be releasing all the details, as we always do, in the lead up to the election campaign. I can certainly take off the table a mass leasing, privatisation campaign and certainly take that off the table for you right now.
But continue to leave the door open to some form of privatisation.
Well, Sarah, you're saying what you say, I'm saying what I say.
And never the twain shall meet.
Jocelyn Evans from 4BC. On the issue of decriminalising abortion, Labor has committed to introducing a bill after the election. Will the LNP be making any commitments on this issue?
No, our party policy is firm that the law doesn't need to be changed.
Anyone else? Mr Nicholls, Stuart Lake from AAP.
Yep.
You've said today quite clearly that you won't be forming a coalition with One Nation,
Yep.
but you previously referred to them as the B team in Queensland politics. Where will they be appearing on the ballots across the state at the next election?
Oh, well, Stuart, as I've indicated, that I think we need to be clear about this, that the allocation or the recommendation on preferences is just that. It's a recommendation. Voters are always able to make up their mind one way or the other. In terms of the recommendations, that decision will be made, A, when the election is called, we know who's running in each of the seats, and it'll be made on a seat-by-seat basis.
Would you be open to minority government with One Nation support?
I'm aiming to get.
Yes, we know what you're
I'm aiming to get 47 plus seats.
That's a hypothetical.
As is yours.
Yours is hypothetical. So you're dealing in hypotheticals, but you won't answer.
40, the aim is, and the aim always ought to be. The aim always ought to be.
Rule out minority government with One Nation.
Patrick, rule in, rule out. That's the game that all you guys like to play. Let me say this: our aim, our ambition, is to get a majority LNP government, because that's the only way that you're able to deliver the outcomes that will deliver a better Queensland. And the clear warning is this: a vote for a minor party is a vote for the Labor Party. And how do we know? Because we've seen it happen before here in Queensland. We saw it in '98, where 11 people got elected and they disintegrated within 6 months, and we saw it again in 2001. If you want a strong Conservative government in Queensland that has real plans, not just thought bubbles, then you have to vote one for the LNP.
Mr Nicholls, Leonie Mellor, ABC. You talk about yourself leading an experienced team. We've got Lawrence Springborg and Jeff Seeney retiring at the next election. How significant has their contribution been, and do you think that'll leave an LNP lacking depth?
Lawrence and Jeff have both made an enormous contribution to the Queensland Parliament over many, many years, and I've acknowledged that on a number of occasions when both announced their retirement. But in terms of depth, we've got people like Scott Emerson, we've got people like Andrew Powell, we've got people who have been ministers throughout the shadow ministry who are putting their hands up and who are available and who will make great experienced ministers who bring that wealth of knowledge and that hard-won experience of our term in government to the cabinet table.
That's all we've got time for. You didn't mention asset sales. You didn't mention coalition with One Nation. You didn't mention Campbell Newman. What did you think of the portrait that was unveiled at Parliament House?
I took the view, being somewhat experienced in these matters, that if I didn't mention them, you would. And I have to say that I'm collecting on that bet. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And you've not answered another question. A very long list. Mr Nicholls, thank you for your time today. Please thank our guest speaker, Tim Nicholls, Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, mate.